Whether it's cars, comics, video games, or violins, there's a little geek in all of us. It's time to give your geek a voice. It's time for Geek Therapy. Here's your host, Johnny Hamburger.
Do you remember the Sandlot? Dost thou remember thine Sandlot? I shalt speak in the King's English for the remainst of the show. No, I shannot. No, I shan't. No, I shall not speak in the King's English. Could you imagine the train wreck that a show would be if I were to speak like that? Could you, because you've heard the train wreck, that is the first 30 seconds of this show of me trying to speak like that. Oh my gosh, my brain. I got to remember not to, put my hands down forcibly on this desk here, because I've listened to a show on the radio and it sounds way different once it's going over the air. So I'm going to barely touch the desk here. And while I can't hear it in the recording, it goes across the air. Hear that? You probably heard that really loud. I just barely set my hand down on the desk. Anyways, let's get back to what I originally opened the show with, and that is a little bit of nostalgia for us 30-somethings, perhaps a little older, perhaps a little younger. That is a defining movie for us growing up as youngsters, The Sandlot. The movie about baseball. But really, it was a movie about youth and about the summer. Because there were kids who I grew up with, friends and such, who didn't even play baseball. Who couldn't throw a baseball 5 feet in front of them. But The Sandlot was still, even to this day, it's still one of their favorite movies. It's definitely one of my favorite movies ever. Forever. I identified quite a bit with a couple characters in the movie, and I think a lot of us did. One reason I think some movies stick with us forever. Okay, I won't do that anymore. Squints. Is we have very relatable characters. You watch the movie and say, "Oh, you're totally yeah," or "You're totally Squints," or "You're totally Benny," or whatever. So we have this attachment to these characters. So I identified with a couple of characters. First and foremost, from a purely aesthetic approach, I identified with Squints because I also had big glasses. Although, you know what? His glasses in that movie they were mostly a prop, or at least his prescription wasn't nearly as strong as mine are. I was going to say were. Nearly as strong as mine are. I had big, thick Coke bottle glasses. I could go into the wilderness and be able to light fires and campfires and survive with the thickness of my glasses. I could start a fire if I looked at a piece of paper wrong. If I even looked at some kindling in the wrong way, it was like I had laser vision, like I was Superman, like I was a stupid, nerdy Superman. Actually, Clark Kent wore glasses. Oh, geez. Anyway, so I identified aesthetically with Squints. Squints was kind of, he was a dork. He thought he was cool, but he was a dork. Hurry up, my clothes are going out of style. They already are out of style. So many quotes from that movie. But the kid I identified with the most, and I'm blanking on his name. It's the main freaking character. Oh, my goodness. Smalls. It's Smalls. I was trying to remember his first name. His first name was, hey, Scotty. His mom called him Scotty. Okay, his name was Scotty, and his dad called him Scotty Smalls. But more importantly, just Smalls. Anyways, I identified with him mostly because he was a geek. I think a lot of us probably identified with him mostly. Although I would say, while I was a geek, and I also had an erector set, which erector sets were awesome. We could do a whole segment about erector sets. Do they still sell erector sets? You could build anything with an erector set. Like literally anything you put your mind to, you could build with an erector set. Because it actually had everything was metal. real nuts and bolts. Real, like, that's why I wonder if they still sell them today, because apparently kids can't be trusted with real metal objects anymore. What a shame. So anyways, he was always tinkering with his erector set. He bashed his mom in the forehead with a ball bearing. What did he say damn? Did he get in trouble for cussing at that point? Anyways, I identified with Smalls. Although I grew up, I've mentioned this before, I grew up playing baseball, so I didn't have that learning curve that he had when he first joined the fellas on the sandlot and couldn't throw. And Benny's like, just stand there and put your glove up like this. Don't do anything. Just stand here. Just stand here. And Benny hits the ball like right into his glove. Anyways, I identified with him because that was kind of me. I'd be playing baseball, having fun, and then I would go back home and play with my erector set. But there's one awesome undertaking that me and my friends did after that movie. You remember as a kid when you'd go see like a karate movie or something like that? Like when you went to see The Karate Kid, for instance. Karate and your kids, Karate Kid. And you just wanted to beat the crap out of your little brother. Like you wanted to test all the stuff you saw on the screen. Like, I can totally sweep the leg, Johnny. Even though Johnny was the bad guy in Karate Kid. My brain goes down these trails, but I'm allowed to. I'm allowed to say whatever I want on Geek Therapy. Geek out however I want. We are allowed to geek out however we want. So anyways, we would watch these karate movies, and then you and your brothers or your siblings, sisters, would be kicking the crap out of each other, walking out of the movie, go home and act like you're ninjas. So after we saw The Sandlot, we got inspired to make our own Sandlot. Kind of adjacent to the house I grew up in, there was, it was a part of, there's an undeveloped street, I guess you could say. Like they cleared out the trees, to make for a future street. There was no street there yet, but for years, maybe 10 years, it was just this big clearing. You got pine trees on the left, and then several hundred feet away, pine trees on the right. And in between, you just had this clearing of basically tall grass and shrubs. So we went out there after watching The Sandlot. Let's go build our own Sandlot. So we went out there with lawnmowers and rakes and weed whackers and stuff like that. And we cut out a little Sandlot for ourselves, which was really cool. I remember everything's always easier in your mind, especially as a little kid. Everything's easier in your mind until you actually start doing it. And then you're like, what the heck is going on? This is taking forever. It's not working. The issue with our Sandlot was we obviously didn't have earth movers or steamrollers or anything like that, because we thought that never crossed our mind that we would have to actually, level the earth, that baseball fields are actually leveled, flat, compact topsoil, and then sandstone. Or what do they use on the infield? Is it sandstone? I don't know. Anyways, I only played on it for 20-something years. I have no idea what the material was. Anyway, so we cut down all the shrubbery and mowed all the grass, and we whacked in. We got our own little field, but I remember it being almost impossible to play on. Or actually, impossible depends on your willingness to acquire broken ankles, because the path, let's just say, from home plate to first base was ripe with holes dug by animals or otherwise, and mounds and fire ant mounds and just uneven earth. So you'd be running to first base, and if you could take one or two broken ankles, you might get there. If you could beat out the throw. And by the way, the ball hit on the ground it's not going to go straight. It's just going to wibble and wobble and bounce and take bad hops. Like, you talk about bad hops. You try to play baseball on a field you made by yourself with your stupid little 10-year-old friends. That's impossible. Taos Hill, that they just got rid of at Minute Maid Park, which I'm kind of sad to see go, but it was a unique part of Minute Maid. Anyways, you talking about Townsville. Our sandlot was basically a billion mini Townsvilles, and it was impossible to play on, but it was really fun, and I was really proud of what we accomplished, that we actually had set out to do a thing, and we did the thing, even though we could have easily, been at a real baseball field within 5 minutes. There's plenty of baseball fields where I grew up. Where I live right now, I can walk, an eighth of a mile and be on a baseball field. Many baseball fields. And soccer fields, for that matter. Anyways, I was just reminiscing about The Sandlot. Do you have a movie that you reminisce about? Maybe it's not The Sandlot. Maybe you're a generation ahead or behind my generation of 30-somethings. What was your movie that you related to? Porky's? I hope not. I hope you didn't identify with any characters in that. Moral atrocity, I will say. Anyways, more Geek Therapy to come. Go on Instagram right meow and follow me, Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. And while you're on the interwebs, send me an email, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. That's geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Send it. I'm listening. I'm listening. I check them. I see them. And I promise I will respond to them. So if you doubt me, if you doubt what the king says, and I was about to smack my hand on the desk, it would be very audible. Send me an email. See if I respond or not. I dare you. I challenge you. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Stay right here. It's only a couple minutes of spots. I promise I'll be right here. Come back, please. Speaking of movies, when I was in high school, the first Fast and the Furious came out. And around that time, maybe a few months earlier, my dad, and I can tell the story because my dad has passed away, for one thing. He's not going to hear it. Actually, he might. I'm sending out these radio waves into space. I hope he hears it. So let me preempt this story with sorry, Pops. Anyways, me and my dad bought a piece of crap Cadillac from our next door neighbor. Now, we grew up with almost exclusively Volkswagens. And if we had an American car, they were Dodges, and we had one Oldsmobile. But we had never had an American luxury vehicle. So my dad bought this Cadillac from our next door neighbor, and it was unimaginable garbage. I mean, the inside was great, and it was very comfortable, and it was a Cadillac. Of course, it was a Cadillac, but mechanically, the cooling system was just in such disrepair. It would pee out the coolant daily. It would just be gushing out of there. But when it was running fine, the motor was still really strong. So my dad bought this Cadillac, and around that time, Fast and the Furious came out. So me and a couple friends or whatever, we went to see the Fast and the Furious, the first one. And we took my dad's Cadillac. And so, like I was mentioning in the first segment, you watch movies when you're young, and then you sort of, it gets you all amped up, and you sort of try to mimic. This is a good one. You try to mimic the movie. So, after watching Fast and the Furious, me and my dumb friends are all amped up on car chase scenes. And here I am, 16 years old, 17 years old, with a V8 Cadillac, which is the first V8 I for sure had ever driven. It's probably the first V8 we had ever had. That's not true. We had a van, and we called it the Shaggin' Wagon. It was a Dodge Ram, and I think it was a V10. but I think it was diesel. So, and it wasn't fast. It was a van. It wasn't fast. The Cadillac V8 was actually fast. I don't think it was a North Star V8. I think this was prior to the North Star. Hello, car geeks. Hello, car nerds. Talking to you. Bringing you in here. It was a Cadillac V8, but it was prior to the North Star, so I'm guessing it was maybe an LS1. Were caddies using LS1s? Did they share the LS1 format? Anyways, V8. It was very fast. Fastest car I had ever driven, at least. By today's standard, no, it's not fast. So we watch Fast and the Furious, get out of it all amped up, seeing car chase scenes. So, driving home from the mall, I was like, let's see what this baby can do. And so I kicked the tires, light the fires, floored it. And it was an 80s Cadillac. It still had the digital heads-up display, but I don't know, youngsters remember this. In the 80s, the speedometer could not show you by law. The speedometer only went up to 85. Now, I have a DeLorean, which is a 1983, and its speedometer only indicates up to 85. But here's the myth. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't get. That's not a governor. The 85 speedometer in 1980s vehicles is not a governor. So I'm in the Cadillac, flying, and what happens is the speed starts counting up, 0 to 60, and then you're 70, 75. Once it hits 85, it just starts flashing. I guess it was just kind of, I know why they put the 85 limit on the speedometer. It's supposedly to discourage you from going over 85 because, if I can't see what I'm doing, then I'm just not going to do it. Bullcrap. It just meant when you got pulled over for doing 120 and the cop says, hey, you know how fast you're going? You're like, 85? I was only going 85, officer. Oh, I clocked you at 120. Well, your thing's wrong because my thing, 85. 85 miles an hour, sir. Or madam. Equal opportunity on Geek Therapy. So anyways, I'm flooring it in the Cadillac. My dumb little brother and a couple buddies in the car going God knows how fast. I'm over 100. For sure over 100. Which wasn't the bad part. It was open road. There was nobody around, which is the only reason I even attempted it. The bad part was, and I know you car guys are already knowing what's coming. You can't just put on the brakes and slow down a land yacht like a V8 Cadillac from the 80s. The caddies aren't known for great brakes. So I apply the brakes and just plumes of smoke coming out from the wheel wells. I just erased those brakes. You might as well have taken a pencil eraser and stuck it out the window and dragged it on the concrete. That's how fast I went through all four brakes of that Cadillac. And so, oh my goodness. We got it home. Of course, I didn't tell my dad about it. That we got home, pulled up, and the brakes are all squeaking because, of course, we ground them right down to the rotors pretty much. I think it was just caliper on rotor. I may be over-imagining it, but the brakes were definitely effed. They barely existed anymore. So anyways, a day or two later, it's dinner time. And my dad's like, well, I got to take the Cadillac in. I messed the brakes up. And he's like, when you guys took it out the other day, did you notice the brakes were a little bit squishy? And I'm like, no, Pops, that's weird. I have no idea. That is baffling, Father. Why would your brakes be so bad? Didn't you just buy the car? But here's the thing. And any of my friends listening to this already know. They're already rolling their eyes. They're already reminiscing about the many car rides with my dad. My dad drove like an absolute lunatic. Here's the thing. He drove like a lunatic, but 99.9% within the law. Like, he didn't really speed too much or that bad that I remember, but he always used his signal. he never ran like yellow. Like he was pretty good about being a maniac within the confines of the law. And as one of my brother's friends once told the story, my dad was driving, like my brother and his buddy as teenagers to Astroworld. Oh my goodness. I just talked about Astroworld. RIP Astroworld. So anyways, my dad's driving my brother and his friend to Astroworld, and my brother and his friend get off the roller coaster. I think they went on the Viper or something, or Accelerate, or what other coasters were there at Astroworld. Anyways, they got off a roller coaster, and my brother's friend is like, the car ride up here was 1,000 times more terrifying. So that's how my dad drove. He ruined Astroworld for my brother's friend because the car ride up there was actually death-defying. So the concept of, rattling through my dad's head of that he must have ruined the brakes himself was totally within the realm of possibility. He didn't question that his teenage sons had goofed around, monkeyed around in his Cadillac. He just assumed, because of how he drove, that he messed up the brakes. And I didn't want to get in trouble. So I was like, yeah, Pops, that's weird. What'd you do? Like Tommy Boy, what'd you do? Oh my goodness. And my dad lived the rest of his life not knowing that I ruined the brakes. But honestly, it was more of a safety thing. Brake pads are not expensive. At least for that Cadillac, there's no way those brake pads were expensive. So we've been talking about movies a little bit, talked about cars a little bit. But yeah, what stupid things have you guys done after seeing a movie? I mean, within a moral or immoral context. So far for me, it was building a Sandlot after watching The Sandlot, trying to beat the crap out of my little brother after watching karate movies, and then as a teenager, just annihilating the brakes in my dad's Cadillac. Piece of crap Cadillac, by the way. Remember, annihilating the brakes in my dad's Cadillac after watching the first Fast and the Furious. Those are my stupid movie stories. What are yours? Email me, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Again, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. I'm like a robot. And follow the Instagram, Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. We'll be right back. Just a few minutes. More geeky silliness. Stay right here.
3, 2, 1, fight!
So, the other day, it was a Sunday. One of the things I like to do from time to time, either on a date or mostly just by myself. Who am I kidding? And don't let your mind go where I know it's going right now, because I did not think of how I was phrasing this. Holy crap. Something I like to do by myself, mostly, is go sit at the end of a runway and watch planes land or take off. Just get whatever you're thinking out of your head. That's another... Just drop it. Anyways, watching planes land is much better than watching them take off, usually. At the little spot I go to here, the closest airport to me is Bush Intercontinental Airport. So I go down, and there's a little parking lot off of Lee Road. This is not any secret spot or anything like that. People know. People have known about this spot for years, and I've been going there for years. I used to go with every once in a while with my best friend's dad, who was a pilot, and we would go, and he would have the air traffic radio on, and he'd say, "All right, the next thing flying over is a DC-10. The next one after that is a 737. Here comes a Learjet. Here comes whatever, an international 747 coming from the Netherlands." And so if you haven't done that, I highly recommend just going and sitting and watching planes land. And the reason why watching planes land is better than watching them take off is because watching it, depending on the wind direction, that determines how the runway is being used. What direction the planes are going to be landing and taking off from. Airplanes will always, well, most of the time, use the runway in an orientation that faces into the wind. You don't want a tailwind when taking off. You always want to land and take off into the wind. Get as much lift going over those wings as possible. So anyways, when airplanes take off, it's not as fun to watch because they usually rotate or pull back on the stick pretty far away from the observing area. So they don't really go shooting over your head that closely. By the time they get over your head, wherever you're parked or wherever you're sitting, they're pretty close. But landing is where they buzz you right over your head, because landing, they're trying to use as much of the runway as possible for, landing. So they'll try to get down pretty near the end of the runway where you're at. So that's really cool, is watching them land. You feel the whoosh off the wings, and it's deafeningly loud, and it's awesome. So anyways, the other day I went up there on the motorcycle. I got on my motorcycle. It's a Yamaha V-Star 650. It's not a huge bike. It gets her done, though. And just sat there and watched the planes land. And while I was sitting there, this man pulled up in a pickup truck, and he had some radios on in his truck, not like listening to music or anything, but he was listening. It sounded official. So I thought he was security or something like that, and I thought he was about to give me the business for the beverage of choice I was drinking, which on the radio, I'll just say, to not incriminate myself, was water. Brown water. Brown, fuzzy, fizzy water. So I thought he was coming up to me to give me the business. But he walks up to me and he says, "A man after my own heart." And I said, "How you doing, sir?" His name was Daniel. And he was a pilot. And apparently he was quite a decorated pilot. He was telling me all about how he has aircraft parts and wings and stuff hanging at the Flight History Museum in Galveston. So this guy was a pretty legit deal. And so he just sat with me and talked for maybe 30 or 40 minutes. He said he had no plans to do so, but he saw me sitting next to my motorcycle watching planes land, and he felt a kindred spirit, and he came over and sat next to me and imparted his wisdoms. And I said, the first wisdom I would like you to impart on me is what's the deal with my beverage here? Is this cool or not? And he said, "Well, just do what I do and keep doing it until someone tells you to stop." And I said, "Good man." That's a pretty, that might not be the best motto in life, but in that situation, it was pretty good. So he's like, "Keep doing it until someone tells you to stop." It's like, that's awesome. But he was a pilot, and he gave me all sorts of wisdoms, because I want to be a pilot. I want to get my pilot's license. I don't want to be a commercial pilot. I have no interest in, making money off of flying people around. I want to make my living on the radio, but I like my private pilot's license. And one of the questions I asked him, the most important question, I asked this of any pilot that I talked to, and it's only been a couple so far that I've asked this question. One was a flight instructor when I took my first discovery flight down at West Houston Airport. And the question is, I play, and I struggle to call it play, Flight Simulator. I've got thousands of hours under my belt in flight simulators. And I said, so how does playing Flight Simulator for thousands of hours, is that actually useful towards getting your pilot's license, or is it all just wasted time? Because I don't play flight simulators, just to get the plane in the air and do loop-de-loops and crash it and, have fun like that. my version of fun with flight simulators is trying to do all the protocol as I know it. Anyways, he said us pilots play flight simulators all the time. It's very useful. So if you have, Microsoft Flight Simulator or something like that, if you have a lot of hours in Flight Simulator, what that translates to towards getting your license is saving thousands of dollars. Because as you can assume, and I already knew this, as you can assume, getting a pilot's license is not cheap. You can expect to pay upwards of $10,000, probably around $12,000 or $13,000 on average for a pilot's license. He said, unless you have a lot of Flight Simulator under your belt, because what playing Flight Simulators do is it gets you way more familiar with instruments in the instrument panel. He said it can't obviously replicate the pressure of the control surfaces, and I know this because I don't want to say I've piloted planes, but I've been in lots of small planes and I've taken over the controls a few times. It's really fun. And there is a pressure of the surface area of the control surfaces of the yoke and rudders and whatnot. Think of it as putting your arm out the window on the highway and the air pressing against your hand. We've all done that. We all know what that is. So that's what's going on the wings and the ailerons and the flaps and the rudder and the elevator and everything like that. When you're pulling on the yoke or pressing the yoke, you're pushing against the force of the wind, pushing the opposite direction, equal and opposite direction on that flight surface. So no, flight simulators cannot replicate that perfectly. There are some controllers and whatnots and joysticks that you plug in that will magnetically replicate the pressure of the stick, but nothing is like being in a real airplane, being tossed around in a flying trash can, and all that turbulence and everything, and trying to keep the plane steady. That can only be experienced by actually doing it. But anyways, he said in the flight simulator, you are way more up to speed and way more familiar with the instruments. And lots of the flight training that what you'll go through in flight school is knowing how to read and interpret the instrumentation. So he said, if before you go to flight school, you've been looking at those instruments for thousands of hours over your life, that translates to saving conceivably thousands of dollars in flight school, because you will be able to get through those sections quicker. And what you're trying to do in flight school is demonstrate that you have a mastery over, all the aspects of flying. So if you have trouble with landings or taking off, you don't just pass that part of the course once you do it once or twice decently, or that you have enough time put into it. No, you only pass when the instructor says you pass. So if he's not comfortable or she is not comfortable with how you're operating the aircraft, you don't pass that section. So it's the same thing with instrument familiarity. If you don't know how to read the 6-pack, or you can't tell your turn coordinator from your altimeter, you aren't going to pass that section. So being familiar with the instrumentation will get you through that section much faster. And if you can get through a section of flight training faster, you can save hundreds, even thousands of dollars. So I've got a goal for myself. I wonder if I can do it for under 10 grand. Hopefully, if not my own money. Maybe I can find a sponsor my flight school. And yeah, I wonder. I haven't been to flight school yet, so I don't know how the flight simulator is going to actually translate. I have a good idea of how it's going to translate, and pilots have told me how it translates to real world flight training. But I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to get to a flight school and actually land an airplane myself. That's the biggest thing I want to do. That's like the ultimate goal for me immediately, is landing a plane myself. I've done it so many times in Flight Simulator with the realism set to maximum. I can't put too much pressure on a control because I can actually, you can bend the flaps. Let's say you extend the flaps to 20 degrees and you're going too fast, you'll damage the hydraulics or bend the airframe bend the flaps all together, and it's embarrassing, and you can't do that. So I want to land a plane myself. I don't know. It's just a passion I have. I don't want to do it for money. But on that note, we'll take a break and come back for the last segment of Geek Therapy. Geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. That's the email address. Geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. And then on the Instagram, Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. Look me up. Come interact. Let's have some geeky fun together. Stick around. We will be right back. All right, I'm gonna let y'all inside a little bit. Inside my brain, inside my heart. And it goes along with what I was just talking about, sitting at the runway watching airplanes land. Also, a separate week, I went to watch the planes land, but I went with a special friend. And of the opposite sex variety. It was a date. We went on a date, and I said, let's go watch the planes land, have dinner, whatever. It was a nerd date to me. This is how geeks date. Let's go watch planes land, baby. Talk about planes and life and stuff. So, I've known this young lady for a little while, and she's a goof, and I have a tendency to say stupid things, silly things sometimes, as all men do. But I told this lady, let's see if and let's just be honest, we can go through this entire process without saying anything gross, without talking about anything gross. Can we just be civilized humans on a date? And yeah, of course, no problem. So we went to watch the planes land or take off, which guess what? They were doing neither. We showed up to the airport and the runway was under maintenance. Perfect. But I said, you know what? It's not really about the planes landing. It's about the conversation. And the conversation was just dandy. I'm a radio host. I should be able to carry on a conversation. And a conversation without being gross or stupid. I've done that for the past, how long have I been doing the show? Almost 2 months now. I've been pretty good about it. I've been pretty good about not talking about gross things. Why I did an accent there, I don't know. So anyways, set the precedent for this outing. No talking about stupid, gross stuff. Just be suave and civilized. And I requested the same of her because she gets saucy too. Great. So we show up to watch the planes land. There no aircraft are using the runway, whatever. So we're sitting there talking, just like we weren't even there for 10 minutes. And the dude, somebody pulls up in a little SUV and they park next to us, maybe 20 feet away. Their windows down also. It was a pleasant day. And I didn't notice, but the guy got out of the car and used the porta potty. And I didn't notice that he did this because I don't care what other people are doing, and I especially don't care if they're going to the bathroom. So I didn't notice this guy go use it. Anyways, he comes out and he's kind of like walking around his car, and then he kind of yells over to our car to interrupt getting my groove on. He's like, "There's no toilet paper in there. Do you have any napkins or anything like that?" I'm just like, damn it all. Anyway, I made a point not to talk about gross things or any of that mess, and now the universe sends this. Oh, there's the phone. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. That was our illustrious engineer telling me that a station was going to go off the air and for me not to worry about it. Great. I'm not going to worry about it. Back to my story. This man interrupting a pleasant day to bring up the gross stuff. Like, why can't I if I make a point to avoid it, I get this meteorite out of the sky, boom, blowing up my spot. Hey, I got a duty butt. Can you strangers help me? Damn it, sir. Please go away. You have derailed the entire situation. Didn't actually derail it. It was kind of... It was one of those things where, like, or dates, I guess you could say, where nothing seemed to go your way, but in a way it was endearing. I didn't care. I am such a go with the flow bro, that it didn't affect it. I ain't shook by it. So I'll get off that. That's the end of the watching plane spotting story. And it really wasn't so much about the date. It was just that I was trying to do something romantical, and this giant man. Never mind. I can't do anything right. Well, I can try to do it right, but other people will mess it up. Has anybody else had that common experience? I bet. All right, so let me talk about for the next few minutes something actual science-y things. Astronomy. Where are my astronomy geeks? I know you're out there, and there's geeks about astronomy who maybe only have a passing interest in astronomy. And here's what I'm getting at. Every week, it seems, every few days, it seems, we read these stories about NASA and our telescopes finding new Earth-like planets, which is, of course, awesome. That is very titillating to think about other Earth-like planets, possibly in a Goldilocks zone around their star, that life might exist on. But here's the rub. Here's what I'm getting at. As an amateur astronomy geek myself, I don't care so much anymore about this onslaught of new planets we've discovered that could possibly have life. I know that. We've been hearing that for a couple years now. I mean, we haven't been looking for exoplanets in earnest. Well, we haven't. We have new technology now, new telescopes now that are specialized in looking for these exoplanets. All I'm getting at is, tell us when we found life. That's cool that we find these planets that might support life. Of course, that's awesome. But all we hear about is, here's a new one that might have life. Here's a new one that might have life. Here's 20 more we found yesterday that might have life. Okay, well, call us when one of the little green men Instagrams a selfie, and blows up our Facebook feeds with it. That's great that there's an we already assume there's planets out there. We've assumed that for many, many, many decades, and now we can see them, and we've confirmed our suspicions that there are other planets out there. That's great. But the constant discoveries of these new planets that could contain life, that's not, maybe we're just desensitized to it. It doesn't seem like news, like it's newsworthy anymore. Are you excited by that? Like when you go, online and go to your favorite tech website and read that there's new planets discovered that might have life, does that spark that same fire in you that it did when you first read about it? When we first read that there was water on Mars, that first initial story back, was it mid-90s or so? That was amazing. But we keep hearing about it, so it's like it's not sexy anymore. It's not sexy that we found a dozen more exoplanets. All I'm saying is, and I love astronomy, and I would love to see those planets, but the constant, okay, just let us know when you actually find life, or at least maybe compact all the exoplanets you find in once a year. Just be like, okay, we found 1,000 of them. We haven't seen life on any of them, but we found 1,000 of them so far. So that's all I wanted to say about that. You know, it's finding life on another planet is I'm going to just call it right now, is going to be, to change the course of human history is an understatement. Of course, finding viable and testable and provable life on other planets, whether it's microbes or whatever, it's going to change the course of human history. That's going to be an amazing day. It's going to be even more astonishing to me, at least, than landing on the moon. That the fact that there's life on other planets, that would be an amazing discovery, of course. But I'm kind of desensitized, and I know I'm not alone. I'm kind of desensitized to the constant onslaught of stories about new planets we found that could possibly contain life. Well, of course they could possibly contain life. We know that. Anyways, I'm done with my rant. Thank you for listening to another episode of Geek Therapy. I am Johnny Hemberger. I will continue to guide your geek minds through this milieu of topics, of nerdisms, and I can't wait till next week to see what we're going to talk about next week. What is going to get into our nerd brains that we're going to geek out about? So, Geek Therapy at iHeartMedia.com. That is the email, geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. And follow the Instagram. I post some silly, nerdy things on there. I got a Commodore 64. I have a bunch of Commodore 64 posts on there. My DeLorean's on there. It's Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. So just search Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. And there I am, and there I will be. Join me next week. I'm Johnny Hemberger. You've been listening to Geek Therapy. Thank you for joining me. I love you all. You all are capable of great things. You all are loved. Somebody loves you. I love you. Accept that love. Use it as motivation to do great things and be happy. I love you all. I'm Johnny Hemberger, signing out.